Did you hear the Tas Petroleum Motorama is on bigger and better?
Is that just a guy thing?
It's for the whole family with something for everyone. Motorama is more than just cars and bikes.
Can we go? Can we go? Our rides are free.
Sure thing. Let's get our tickets.
Yay!
Get your heart racing and your adrenaline pumping at Tas Petroleum Motorama. October 26th to 27th, Symmons Plains Raceway. Go to motoramatas.com.au for tickets.
G'day guys, welcome to Motorama, a throwback to the great days of racing in Tasmania from 1953 through to 1968 at the wonderful Longford racetrack. Bit over 4 miles of racetrack, the fastest track in the Southern Hemisphere, attracted 7 Formula One world champions in that period of time. Today and tomorrow, you get to race on this fabulous piece of track in cars from the era. Wish you all good luck, have fun with it, and enjoy Longford.
Joey, I'm super excited for this one because this is, classic cars. You know, this is a soft spot for me, and seeing them set loose on a track as challenging and as fearsome as this is always a fun time.
It's one of the beauties of the virtual world, too, isn't it? That we can kind of recreate the history that once was, that in sometimes machines that are unobtainable out there, and sometimes circuits that no longer exist as well. So, yeah, a soft spot for you in terms of the vintage side of things, but in terms of the, call it virtual side of things, I think it's pretty neat to be able to go out there and recreate everything.
Yeah, 100%. Get to try and pretend we're back in a time of old with all kinds of awesome race cars. Now, why don't we take a look at the schedule that we have up for this one, as we've got a few events that are going to be coming. We have practice right now, then we're going to be going into qualifying very shortly. Then it's our first race in the minis, Mini Coopers. Love seeing these things go at it. After that, we'll head off into the Cobra race. So a little bit faster machines, a little bit faster sports cars. And then we'll combine the two in what is called a handicap race. Essentially, the minis will take off first and the Cobras will try to catch. And then finally, we'll have an open wheel race with both an F1 and an F3 car competing, which did actually race at this track at one time. But it's with all this going on and with all of us talking about this classic track, of course, our viewers over at Symmons Plains might not be as familiar. So, Joey, talk us through this classic and sort of simple-looking course.
It is a relatively simple-looking course, under 10 turns out here and 4.50 miles or 7.242 kilometers. And like I said, it is only 9 turns in length. Couple big brake zones. Specifically, I'm looking down there at Longford Corner and putting the power down, coming down that long Tannery straight into Tannery Corner. Going to really be jumping on the binders down there. So I think if we're looking for some action, definitely head down towards that corner. And then also turn number 9, the very, very final turn after that flying mile straightaway. It is incredibly sharp. So if you miss your brake zone, not only do you have to worry about potential passing cars coming up the inside, but you yourself have to worry about that corner exit and actually getting the vehicle stopped, turned, and then launched down the front straightaway. So I think relatively simple when we look at the track map, but I think it can cause plenty of chaos still.
Absolutely, especially once we get to the open wheelers with the F1 and F3, which, as I said, did race at this track in real life back during its heyday. But the Mini Coopers, looking forward to, as these were always a favorite of my dad's, honestly. And to me, I always love seeing kind of lower powered cars racing, Joey, because I feel like you get a lot more fierce and competitive racing. There's a lot less difference to make out there.
I think that there's a lot of character when it comes to lower horsepower cars, and it also really brings out the driver and their understanding of the equipment underneath it, and then kind of wringing the neck of that equipment and getting the most out of it.
Seeing some views of some of our competitors as well as people watching along over there at Simmons Plains. Big hello to everybody out at the Real Motorama. Glad you could join us for this wonderful afternoon of sim racing. And we'll try and help you along if you're not familiar with the sim racing world. I'm sure for many it seems like, just another video game. But Joey, you and I both know that this gets incredibly serious. And also the wall between real and sim racing has become so thin.
It continued to kind of gets blurred every year. Call it the sim to reality, the bridging of the gaps between the two paddocks. And you're right. I think that there's a few different faces to virtual racing, sim racing. There's the fun side of it that you can have an entry-level rig bolted to your desk and just hop on your machine and do some fun racing. And then you can take it all the way to the quote-unquote professional level where there's guys out there competing for serious dollars in these top-tier global competitions. But I think the beauty of it is such a wide range. Another part of sim racing that I really enjoy is how do you get into motorsports? Lots of people, especially racing car drivers, they get into motorsports through go-karts most of the time. But now that technology is kind of advanced, sim rigs are actually a little bit less expensive than go-karts, and they provide you the opportunity to go out there and race whatever you want. In this case, historic cars, and whenever you want to do it.
And look at that. We even started young on the sim side as we got a new motoring enthusiast getting perhaps one of his first tastes here in the sim rig. So happy to see what he thinks of this afterwards. Hopefully we get a new race fan out of this as they get ready to go. Just a couple more moments until we get into this qualifying session. And actually, no, it looks like we have just started it. And while these minis are small, you can see they definitely can boogie as it gets a fair bit of speed coming up into these corners.
You had kind of mentioned they're one of the most fun to watch, right? Not just fun to drive, but they're also really fun to watch because of their lower horsepower. I feel like the drivers kind of can approach that maximum limit a little bit easier, and once they're there, the thing starts sliding around, and that's really brings out the character in it, is watching the vehicles on the absolute limit of traction, sliding them around.
And this was before they really had figured out a lot of the technology we have nowadays that keep the cars so planted. So there is a lot of sliding that you'll probably see these classic vehicles do. As we see Declan Brush bring it up into Tannery Corner, just whipping that thing around, getting on the throttle, front-wheel drive car, and doing everything he can to carry the speed. This will be up through Long Bridge. This circuit is interesting because it goes over the same river twice. Of course it would, but it has two bridges that it'll cross over, which will narrow up the track significantly in between these long straights before you'll see things open up once again on what they call the flying mile down into the slowest corner, Mountford Corner, here at the end. Declan Still waiting to put his first lap time in. And they haven't got much time with these lesser powered minis. 10 minutes is going to go by very fast, Joey.
It will go by pretty quick, but being a 4.5-mile circuit at just over 7 kilometers, it's not too crazy long. There's definitely some vintage circuits out there that you look at some of the straightaways and you can pretty much bring the coffee maker, make an espresso inside the car, maybe make a sandwich in there as well, and then get ready for the next brake zone. And even though that these are a little bit less, call it powerful, you can still roll down the window, stick out your arm, and start paddling.
Exactly. As Declan out of the final corner, get ready to cross the line. Let's see if this is a timed lap for him. As he comes across, looks like no, he has not set one yet that I've got on my timing and scoring. So this must be the start of his first flyer. Fair bit of elevation change here at the start of the lap. You watch him come over the crest, and then perhaps the most iconic corner here, Joey, the viaduct.
You had mentioned the couple of bridges that it goes across, and I think here's a good example of going underneath kind of the figure eight there with one, and the other one is a little bit more drastic. I have a feeling that maybe if Red Bull got a hold of the circuit, maybe it wouldn't be bridges, it would be jumps over in some of these areas.
Right?
It'd be fun to watch, wouldn't it? I think the Mini Coopers with their rally heritage would totally do it.
Oh, that would be amazing. Now we got to get somebody. You have more motorsport connections than I do. You have to see if you can talk to one of your Red Bull connections and see if we can make that happen. But Declan getting up to speed. You could see him actually go over the train tracks because, yes, we went under them before with the viaduct, and then you go over with the railway crossing just that one corner later. This is back on Tannery, straight up to Tannery Corner. This one's kind of interesting because they have runoff to the outside. There's an open gate to essentially just a field, a farmer's field.
I love the style of this circuit. It just feels so rally-esque. I know that it's not a point-to-point race, it's a lap race, but just how it feels is very Targa, very rally-esque, and I think that kind of goes with how the driver attacks the course and how it's also driven, but it's pretty neat to see.
Yeah, and you can see the car dancing around as well as we ride on board, getting some sector times now, and interestingly, Declan is not the quickest currently. Ascari Kantonen has the fastest first sector, and then Max Schrapp, it looks like, has the fastest second sector. But Declan's going to be among the first to complete a full lap here. It looks like we've got about 16 cars, actually make that 15, that are going to be competing here in this first race. That should be plenty to give us some fun, especially because what I'm anticipating, Joey, is without the power, I imagine it's going to be pack racing in these little boxy cars.
It'll be really interesting, especially off of the, call it opening lap, right? It might get strung out after a few corners and they really start to maybe adjust to their brake zones. But what I'm really curious about is these are little refrigerators going around, right? They're just these little brick boxes. How well do they draft? They're going to reach that terminal top speed, kind of like how we would see Miata racing over here in North America, MX-5s. So, yeah, how do they draft? It'll be cool.
Yeah, I'm anticipating it. It should be relatively powerful, but we got to wait and see to really find out because we're just getting some times in here, and Kantonen is currently our quickest with a 2:48.8. So there's your marker. Everybody else is trying to hit. We only have 3 minutes left, so drivers really have to get on it if they hope to get another lap in and hope that they can keep the car safe. You don't want to throw it away here in qualifying by having an accident.
Blast this little Mini Cooper up through these vineyard-looking roads here. Really just keep your foot to the floor. I tell you what, Joe, you better have a light throttle spring underneath that right pedal, or hopefully none at all. Maybe some weights in the boot.
Right. Do some of the work for you. But then you got to imagine that you're going to need those brakes. These things getting some speed by the end of the straightaways, and you can see how narrow these tires are as well. These are very skinny wheels as they were back in the day. So they're not going to have the stopping power that you might expect for modern touring cars. So Nicholas Kirsten is second quickest right now. It's about a tenth of a second difference for nearly a 3-minute lap. The tenth of a second's actually pretty close.
I mean, I'm looking really the whole field, but the majority, call it the top 6, all within 1 second there. And like you just pointed out, call it the top 4, about half a second separation with 4.5 miles. That's pretty gosh dang close. Half a second separation, call it like a 2-mile circuit. All right, I consider that pretty dang close racing, but half a second at a 4.5-mile circuit, that means these cars are very evenly matched.
Now a minute and a half left on the clock. Schrapp completes his second lap. It was his best, but he stays in third at 2:49.2. And he's just been overtaken by Reese Gardner. Now, he's a very familiar face for us as we've not only watched him race, but we've commentated alongside Reese from time to time. But he's not just good behind the microphone. He is third quickest here right now in this event. We'll see if he can redeem himself. We called a race with him in it last time, and had had a little hiccup at one point, but came away with the win, but has been looking to try and come back and see if he can repeat a good result here.
I believe this is headed down into Longford Corner down here. Huck that thing into that right-hander. It is fun to watch these cars and on the limit because they're so light. I know that you had mentioned that they have the little tires and the little brakes, but they also have the little chassis and the little weight number when it comes to it. So it really is an extra large go-kart out there, and the drivers can find those limits. And even if they overstep the limit, it seems like with the front-wheel drive platform, it's rather forgiving. So it is fun to watch.
Curious, this is all done on rFactor too. If somebody's done a Mr. Bean mod with a chair on top of it, steering with his crazy contraption, but it's checkered flag for now. These drivers all solidly in the cockpit of these virtual cars. Crossing the line, Nicholas Hillebrand is going to put one down and actually go up to the outside of row 2. He needed that as well.
Very good lap from the number 70 there. So the times are tightening up. I expect that everybody that at least has started their lap will probably be able to complete it here. As we watch Darren Andrews in the number 7 car, he hasn't actually put down a lap time, and he's off the racetrack right there. So I'm not sure that's really going to help his case. But looking at that timing tower, it's gone from call it the top 6 to the top 8, maybe even the top 9, be it a 1.5 second separation.
That's a good sign. We could be in for a nice tight race here. And we did get Darren Andrews on the board at a 2:53, it looks like. So at least he got one down. That means all 15 cars have set a time. Question is, will it be really representative of the pace that they can achieve for this short sprint race? Gary James looks like he's still trying to finish his lap. He sits in 8th right now. They should be allowed to complete these hot laps, but Gary looks like he's a little slow in the second sector.
Yeah, a little bit far off, considering Sector 1 was pretty much smack on top of his fastest. Looking at his lap time of a 2:48.336, at least currently. That's what he needs to get to. It looks like his fastest is actually a 2:49.9, so we'll see if he gets to that. Maybe just a couple corners left here. This real big break zone, but if you didn't get the run onto this straightaway, that can certainly dictate the lap time too.
Yeah, that 2:48.336 is because Reese Gardner has taken that top spot away from Canton, and on his final lap, a little bit early of a turn in, and over he goes. These cars do have that light chassis, but it is also very top heavy, as you can tell.
Especially, I think it's also a sign of the grip level, right? Yeah, it's got a little bit of a high center of gravity, but the grip level is there, which means that they can, in fact, roll over.
So don't want to hit those tires at the apexes on the insides of the corners. Give them a wide berth if you can. Steph Hermans will cross the line, and he will improve. He goes up to 8th position with that latest lap of a 2:49.8. And I think that's going to be our last driver. Yeah, that is our last driver to set a time. So grid is set for the race itself. I believe we're going to be getting to that in just a moment here as we watch some of these lovely overhead shots before the event itself. The wonderful Tasmanian circuit, which sadly doesn't fully exist anymore. Some of the roads still do, but at least one of the bridges you are unable to travel over, Joey.
I said it kind of open the show. I think it is neat that in the virtual world, we have the ability to recreate these things, not just go out there and race vintage cars, especially kind of almost create a spec race. I mean, how many of these cars, A, first exist, and then B, are actually in racing conditions? So that's pretty cool to get a group together to do that. And then for the circuit to actually be able to recreate these circuits that aren't actually there anymore. I think it is a really cool thing, and I think that some of the sims could certainly capitalize on that. There's huge vintage communities out there that would love to see a lot of true vintage circuits.
Now, this is going to be obvious for everybody who's at the actual Motorama watching this, but for those out on the internet, we've got some guests that are taking their hand at trying to race around this circuit. Looks like at least one is in the Cobra right now. So for those that are coming in and trying their hand at sim racing and hopping into the car, folks, Joey is a real-world professional race car driver, so he knows what he's talking about here. Joey, give us some tips for these folks that are going to hop into these rigs.
I think if you haven't ever done sim racing before, it's more get used to how the thing turns. It's not going to feel exactly like your car, so the pedals aren't going to feel exactly the same. The steering wheel isn't going to feel exactly the same. And it's okay, because guess what? It's got a little button that you can go ahead and hit the reset over there. So if you go smashing into a fence, if you go smashing into another car, it is all right. It's all about having fun and then starting to understand the equipment. If you can kind of pick out the braking markers, let's say if you're going as fast as you can on a straightaway, well, you need to stop eventually. What racing drivers do is they pick a marker that is, hey, if you go past this, you're not going to be able to stop and make the corner. If you stop earlier than this, then you're going to be a little bit slow. So you just kind of work up to each one of those markers. But I think more importantly, it's about having fun, getting in there, kind of seeing how it feels, and just kind of doing laps. Seeing, and honestly, if it's familiar down there, seeing if you pick out some of the sites that look familiar.
Exactly. This has been a custom-made track that fans have put together, but they went to some intense details around this circuit, modeling many of the real-world buildings from 1967 is what they've set up here. Now we're getting a few of the overhead shots,
yeah.
I think, of the warm-up here.
Oh, this is a great shot. We got a more the kind of what's going on at the Real World Motorama over there on screen. And just like you were saying, watching a lot of people actually trying out the sim for the first time. It definitely can be an acquired taste, but looking at those setups, Joe, you're familiar with the sim world, definitely. It's great to see basically an ultra-wide monitor. They're using the nice wheel and pedal setups. It's easy to get in and out of it, and basically just try sim racing, try something virtual.
Absolutely. I do like these setups. Yeah, these are pretty nice. And I will warn folks, it's easy to get bitten by the bug on this one. You can try this, and the next thing you know, you're getting yourself a wheel and pedal set for your home and downloading one of the many popular sims out there and trying it. And it becomes a pretty all-enveloping hobby in some cases, but
it's like
well
going to
worth
the
it.
go-kart track, right?
Yeah,
I mean, how much fun is it to go to the go-kart track and have fun with your friends? This is exactly like doing the same thing, but guess what? You get to have it in your basement.
Exactly. A lot less travel, a lot less worry about your safety. The mini race is coming up in just a moment after our warm-up wraps up here, so we'll have that up in a second. If you're over at Motorama, welcome, and hope you enjoy the show on this one. We've got 4 different races. This will be the first of those 4 that we are going to be covering this afternoon. And at least for Joey and I, it's actually this evening, but we're happy to stay up a little bit late over here in North America to get to enjoy the spectacle with you folks over there. And a bit jealous because I was looking up some info about Simmons Plains Raceway, and it sounds really, really cool. Some awesome history over there as well, including supercars racing there, apparently, Joey.
Ooh, now that would be fun. And you had mentioned it is the evening time for us over here in North America, but I gotta say, it works out because I made myself a big old plate of steak nachos, and that was delicious. So I'm ready to go. I'm ready to watch some virtual racing. I'm ready to watch some Mini Coopers, some Cobras, some Formula cars. I'm all here for it.
Same here. I always love these old vintage races we get to cover in sim racing. So as soon as I was asked to hop on board, this was an immediate yes for me. We did actually, like I said, get to cover this track just a little bit earlier in the year. It was with 50s and 60s sports cars with the same club. You see that HRSC on the screen that puts that on. They do all kinds of races in classic cars in the sim. It looks like cars are ready to grid up. So let's go through our starting order. Reese Gardner will be next to Ascari Continen with Nicholas Kirsten starting in third. You've got Matt Wright on the outside of the second row for Sussex Engineering. Then we get to fifth place with Nicholas Hillebrand in the number 70. Max Schrapp will be starting in P6. Devin Brown will be P7, and Steph Hermans will start 8th today for our first 4 rows. You've got Gary James in 9th and David Purchase in 10th for the Sprightly Tortoise team. Mark Johnson starts 11th, and Riley Wyans will start in 12th. I'll just wrap these up as Darren Andrews starts 13th, Austin Birchfield 14th, and Declan Brush 15th. Cito Wire will not be starting this race in a Cobra. We'll have that combination a little bit later on. We get to the action right away as the green flag is out, and Reese Gardner will lead them off the line down to the run over the crest and into the viaduct. Now, hopefully they'll get that well sorted out by the time they get into there, because the track narrows and it's going to be difficult if we get 2 and 3 wide as all the drivers swing under the train tracks.
You had mentioned it goes into one of the most narrow sections, and we already got 1 car, 2 cars tumbling. Thank goodness this is the virtual world, but you see the green number 94. I see a 3rd car off underneath the train tracks now, so now it really narrows up and over Kings Bridge.
So Gardner will hold on to the lead. That's Cantonen just behind him, still giving chase. He's going to take a big look down to the inside into Longford Corner, but can't quite get there. Around the pub they go, and now it's on to Tannery Straight and up and over the train tracks. So this is where we finally get a sense of what the slipstream will look like, as this is our first big long straightaway.
We did have a few cars definitely go by the wayside there in the first few corners, but like you were mentioning, this is the first true sign that we're going to see of the slipstream riding on board with Ascari Cantonen here, just slowly hunting in Reese Gardner, and there you see it. He's going to pop to the inside, which is going to be driver's right, but Reese actually reaches the brake zone before Cantonen can get fully up alongside there, so maybe the slipstream not quite as powerful as what we thought.
Not there, at least. We got one more longer straight, the Flying Mile coming the other way back. So will that be enough for Cantonen to try and make a move that time? Or will he be under attack? Because look at how close Kirsten is behind in that purple and yellow. This is going to be fascinating, because now, once again, they start to pick up speed already as fast as 200 kilometers an hour.
I got to familiarize myself with more racing in Australia, because this reminds me of the IROC scheme. Remember the IROC cars with all the different colors? Everything was all spec racing, but just the different colors was basically how you cheered on your favorite driver. And now Matt Wright is looking to the inside of Nicholas Kirsten down this incredibly long Flying Mile straightaway.
Coming down to the braking, and it looks like Matt Wright might be able to take this third place away. Getting to the inside, he's scored in third. Oh, and the 9 out breaks himself. That's going to be Gary James running into a bunch of the leaders. Who got through that? Because I thought at least one car snuck through. I think maybe Kirsten?
I'm not sure. I think it might be Hillebrand that snuck through. There might be 2 cars up there. Hillebrand and Kirsten looked pretty peeled together, and then Reese Gardner, thanks to that front-wheel drive and the tight turning radius, just kind of stood on the gas, whipped the front end around. So we've got 2 packs of 2 cars up front.
Comedy gold into that final corner for our cars.
It really
for the
was.
First time. Glad that we at least have some able to carry on from there, disappearing under the train tracks, and then out from the trees they go over the King's Bridge. They now try to line up the braking into Longford Corner. It is indeed Hillebrand who leads ahead of Kirsten. We got another yellow happening. Not sure who that involves, but must be another problem down into the viaduct. So Kirsten sets chase as they exit past the pub.
Now comes the question. I don't know if the pace is necessarily that big between our front 2 and Reese Gardner there in third place. Because remember, Reese in that green number 94, he was our pole sitter, so he was the fastest qualifier. I just think there's too much track position. But here comes Kirsten in this number 10 out to driver's left. That's going to put him on the wrong side of the racetrack, but it is the driving line. Maybe a little bit more grip on that racing surface.
Going to be a braking duel down into the corner, smoking the left front. There is Nicholas Hillebrand, but Kirsten is going to be the one. Hillebrand comes back away with the lead, so was able to hold off Nicholas Kirsten. Reese Gardner currently showing at about 3.3 seconds back. So this is what happened at the beginning with Max Schrapp, and that's one of the major ones that you were talking about that sent him on his lid.
Yeah, and then I think there was at least 1 or 2 more in the coming corners back there. So we'll have to see what the Cobras bring with their race. But I think with the Minis being so packed and so close together in terms of their acceleration rate, it didn't help the chaos going into that funnel section.
By the way, Reese Gardner was able to cut it down to about 2.7 seconds at one point, but it's gone back up, I think, because of the slipstreaming we're getting down the straightaway. But it does look like the 94 is relatively fast, but he's only going to have 1 more lap to try to run them down. And if they go side by side here, that will absolutely catch them up a little bit. Under braking once again, 10 around the outside. Nicholas Kirsten going to try and take this away, but the 70 will rebuff him, just kicking up a little bit of dust off the exit. The 2 carry on.
Now we move on to the final lap, so 9 turns remaining. This was another incident to close out the opening lap. You see the number 9 get into the number 11, but I actually think, Joe, the number 11 got into the green 94 before he even got rear-ended there.
I think you're right. Yeah, he was out braking himself already. Oh, are we going to go wheel to wheel down into this braking zone? You could see how unsteady the car is. Such a short wheelbase. These things look twitchy.
Up and under the railroad tracks and now over the King's Bridge here. You're going to come up to pretty much a right-hand 90-degree corner. You see Hillebrand just planting this car right in the middle, and now he actually leaves the door open on the inside. Kirsten's going to take a look deep on the brakes. He's got the inside and the apex.
He's going to get the lead. Nicholas now has to try and fight back. Hillebrand pulls the tow, much the same. The gap behind them, Reese Gardner, down to 1.6 seconds. He's almost cut it in half. You can see him in the green and white starting to gain. Side by side they go once more. Hillebrand looking to the outside as Kirsten tries to defend. Who is the latest on the binders?
This is tricky here, too, because if they go side by side in this, call it sector of the track over here, it's really going to allow that green car in third to close the gap. I think that this is a smart move. Go single file, but our leader blows the corner, and now there's contact between the two. There's a couple more corners here before we get onto that flying mile straightaway, but Gardner has joined the party.
We got a three-way fight and only a couple corners to go to decide the winner of our first race of the afternoon. And coming into the breaking of Newry Corner, it's all going to be about the exit. It's looking like Hillebrand does a pretty good job. He's got a bit of a toe, but which way does he choose and where does Gardner go? Because it's not a very wide track.
And there's already some bump drafting going on. Let's see where Reese decides to go here. This is going to kind of fade back to the left, and now it's just this incredibly long straightaway. Reese actually lifts off the gas. He says these two leaders, they're actually going to wreck themselves.
I was going to say, I think this is smart from Reese. He could steal a march on both of them with a good enough exit, because it is a little bit of a run to the start-finish line. He's pulling up to him once again, though. He's going to try to take that inside away. That's Kirsten in the purple, Hillebrand in the red. Who is going to come away with the win on this first race of the afternoon? Way too deep on the brakes for the tin of Kirsten. He's going to go wide. So does Hillebrand. Here comes Gardner. He's got the shot off the corner, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Despite going deep, it's going to be Nicholas Kirsten who wins race number 1.
I think the comeback goes to that green 94 of Gardner, and look at the pack of cars ensuing here. It was kind of the front three breakaway, but then 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, Johnson, James, Wright, Andrews, they are all packed into it, and some post-race shenanigans as you do in the virtual world.
Exactly. The car is done. You don't need it for this race, and it's going to be repaired by the next one anyways, as Purchase will get to the line last of the drivers able to finish, as everybody else looks like they will wind up a DNF. Cantonen, Brush, Brown, and Schrapp, some major players in there that aren't going to be able to see the checkered flag.
Well, it was an exciting first race of the night, wasn't it, Joe? I think that the opening set of corners, we really got to see how this racetrack is. It was neat to watch the cars in qualifying really be able to kind of fling it around the circuit, but once you put them all next to each other, it got chaotic, to say the least.
It was exciting, but more than that, back to one of your points from earlier, it was fun. I mean, that was just sheer fun to watch. So I can't wait for what is now going to be the Cobras. You can see with some of the footage we've got here, they're going to be a lot faster, which means even longer braking zones now that they're going to have to get on those binders, which should mean that it's going to be even trickier to try and set up for these corners. But here is the finishing results for this first race. Kirsten is going to be your winner over Reese Gardner, with Nick Hillebrand in third, Mark Johnson coming home P4, and then Gary James in fifth. Matt Wright will be P6, Darren Andrews 7th, and Austin Birchfield, as we said, could be amongst the last to actually finish there in 8th. Riley Wines 9th, Steph Hermans in 10th, and then finally last driver to complete this event was David Purchase in 11th. Cantonen, Brush, Brown, and Schrapp, DNFs of our starters for this event, unfortunately. Oh boy, these old Cobras going to be a right handful around this place. I can only imagine the speeds they're going to get up to around here, because the Flying Mile, I think, as the name implies, I think it's almost a mile long.
They might be a right handful, but they're no longer right-hand drive, like the Mini Coopers were. But you're right. It's going to be a completely different beast, in the sense that the Mini Cooper was low horsepower and very incredibly light. Small little itty-bitty tires, and you just wait to the very, very last second to stomp on the brakes. I mean, how did all three of them stop the car in that final corner? All three of them were sideways locked up, and somehow the Minis still got around there. I don't think that's going to be the case with the Cobras. They're going to carry a ton more speed, and they're going to pay a way bigger penalty if you overstep that line, especially with these sharp corners and those brake zones. So if you're doing, call it 140 miles into a brake zone and lock a tire, you're going to have a much bigger incident than maybe just sliding around the back end like you did in the Mini.
Absolutely. And if you've been watching this, as we're getting shots once again of the rigs, the sim rigs down at Motorama, and you think, oh, I could do that. Well, you can. You can hop on into one of the rigs, give it a try, see if you're as quick as some of these sim racers, and if you've got the chops. And then maybe you could join in on the HRSC League and hop into one of their future races and compete against some of them. They do have quite a few Australian members, actually, who compete. We mentioned Matt Wright, Reese Gardner, also amongst them. So love to see a few Tasmanians try to give a go at this series.
I guess if you're looking for any more tips, if they're listening to us over there, sim racing, usually 2 feet, right? I'm sure, Joe, you use 2 feet when you're in the sim,
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah, most of the time it's right foot gas, left foot brake, just like how you would in a little go-kart. And don't be shy with the controls. Most people are way too gentle with the equipment, but you need to get up on the wheel and really take hold of the thing.
So here, as you can see, next race going to be the Cobras, and that'll be race number 2 out of 4. We'll combine the Cobras and the Minis, but they will have a staggered start. So it's going to be the Minis taking off, and the Cobras will be held until almost a full lap is completed. Then they'll be released, and they are going to be given a few laps to try and catch them, 5 laps to be precise, to try and see which of the 2 cars can finish first. But it's going to be a whole bunch of them out there, so it'll be a little bit of chaos, but it'll be a lot of fun to witness, especially since we won't really know who's going to win until the very end. But first, we'll try and get ready with these Cobras to see what they will have in store for us. All the same faces that you saw just before out there once again: Andrews, Johnson, James, Schrapp, getting ready to go out and give this a try. So here's your schedule if you missed it a little bit earlier. So we just had the mini race and the Cobra race going to be good to go in about 6 minutes time.
Just waiting for everybody to pretty much wrap up practice. I know you had mentioned it's going to be minis versus Cobras a little bit further down the road, and I'll time it out to see who's going to get to the checkered flag first, right? That's kind of the style of it. But given the chaos that we saw going down into turn number, call it 1, 2, and 3, maybe we should start them all at the same time. That might be enjoyable to watch too.
Yeah, it would certainly be interesting. Did you see the hop?
Yes, I just did see that.
Wow, that was, it wasn't, I don't think they got all 4 off, but it was very, very close. They're going to be a bit scary, I have to imagine. You don't want to be putting any steering into them going over that train track.
And you already see the number 42 go way too deep into the corner there. That is Declan Brush, and that lap time is pretty much going to be a throwaway here. It's nice to see that for the most part, it looks like the drivers have kept the same paint color scheme, the same numbers over there, and like you've been mentioning, it just swapped over to the Cobras.
Yep, that was done intentionally. They had asked the drivers to pick their color scheme, and they've applied it to each of their cars. So it's all going to be the same. Weiser in the yellow and green, although we didn't get to see him in the minis because he had logged in, unfortunately, in his Cobra for the last race. So we get one more driver this time around taking part in this one, and coming around through the pub. He is unfortunately going to have to take a stop down into that pub, I think, to get a drink after that one.
After riding on board, I don't know. Could you tell the difference in the engine noise between the Mini and the Cobra? Or the speed difference? It is pretty much as different as night and day out there as the 10 and 31 argue up and over those. That is a really, really cool shot to see him jump over those railroad tracks there. But how many times have we already seen cars here in qualifying just go way too deep into the brake zones? I mentioned that the penalty is going to be far more severe if you're doing, call it 150 miles an hour than you were in those little Mini Coopers, maybe at 110 or so. Drivers are going to be thrown for a loop. You just got out of the slow car, you think you can go that fast, and you're in the fast car now, you got to readjust.
Exactly. A little bit different style of driving for sure. All the same physics apply, but it's a very different beast. You know what, honestly, the train tracks are making me think of? This feels very Smokey and the Bandit or Dukes of Hazzard, honestly.
I thought you were going to say the Baltimore GP.
Yeah. Yes. Or there
Reese
was,
Gardner will appreciate that one with the worst tracks.
100%. Also, there was, I think, a race that IndyCar did, I want to say in Mexico City, that went over train tracks that the cars were getting four wheels in the air as well. So, yeah, it's not the first time we've seen something like this, but a little bit more softer sprung, these older vehicles. And this is qualifying, by the way, so 2 minutes left in that, and definitely much faster laps. We're down to 2 minutes 17 for Oskari Canton, who just set the quickest of the session.
It is fun watching the Mini Coopers. I'm really surprised at these Cobras and actually how much they are moving around as well. Coming from the other primary racing sim of iRacing, I don't think that we get to see nearly as much movement over there as we get to see here in this sim. And in my opinion, when it comes down to a pure driving experience, it's about character, right? And being able to relate to that character, whether it's hard to tame or fun to drive or whatever that personality that character may be. It's cool to see it coming out here in the sim.
Absolutely, and I do love that they've modeled the fire spitting out of the exhaust as well.
Totally,
you see them downshifting in these cars. Just so many little details they've put into it. Boy, that onboard makes that bridge look so narrow. And yeah, he's already braking Matt Wright way early, looking for his apex, trying not to hit those tires. I think maybe he clipped one from what it looked like, but he'll get away with it. And then it's up through the gears once again, over the train tracks, and on he goes towards Tannery.
You had mentioned Smokey and the Bandit, right? And very much so. I'm also picturing another famous railroad crossing in Hollywood. Maybe a little bit of Fast and Furious-esque going up and over those train tracks there, you know, especially with the launch, but Matt Wright did a good job getting it stopped down there in Longford corner. This is Tannery corner at the end of the Tannery straight down here, and come down to the long bridge section, kind of funnels down into here, into this kind of, I would call it probably the most technical section on the racetrack, the Newry corner, which kind of feeds itself around to the right a little bit more, and you see him struggling to try to put the power down, and that might be the ugly head of the Cobra, just how much horsepower it actually has.
I mean, he had to save that about 3 or 4 times before finally it was gone. And that ends Matt Wright's qualifying. Checking to see if anybody has crossed the line yet. I don't see any checkered flags, so everybody out still able to complete the laps. Darren Andrews right now our quickest at a 2:15.5. And I think the 13 car is going to be our first one across the line. That's Riley Wyans to complete his qualifying. So where does that put him? And I don't see a time, so that must have been an outlap, unfortunately.
Good shot of the front straightaway here. All these super three-dimensional fans that are pumped to be there on the tower. I saw that they had some excitement on their face, but it is Darren Andrews up top, Gary Cantonen. I think that Cantonen, as long as he can call it start inside the top 5, he's probably looking for redemption. Remember, he was one of those drivers that was caught up in the opening lap incident of that Mini Cooper race. So I think if we're looking forward to this Cobra race, I got my eye on the number 72 to have a little bit of a redemption.
Absolutely. So the 15 crosses the line. Robin DeVos not able to improve. We're waiting for the 4 and the 8. So that is going to be, that's P4 and P8 rather. That's Reese Gardner and Neil Santowski that we're waiting on right now. So coming down the last straightaway here along the Flying Mile, coming into the braking of Mountford corner, looking to try and spot his marker from a long ways away as he is really cooking right now. 293 kilometers per hour that's really going. And now he gets down through the gears, goes around the slowest corner of the track. He needs some time here to try and get himself back up to the top. Reese Gardner is in fourth. Will he improve by about 9/10 of a second to take the pole away? And it looks like that's going to be a no, but he does put himself on the front row.
I mean, by the narrowest of margins. Let's see what Sienkowski can do here in the number 31. Didn't see what that snuck in, but I'm not sure if you caught that, Joe. I think it was 2/1000ths that Reese beat out Ascari for that second place.
Wow, that was as close as they come. So once again, a big hello to all the fans watching out there at Motorama. Glad you could join us. We're getting ready to watch Cobra's race here on rFactor 2 on the Genisus Extreme channel. The HRSC giving us lots of fun with vintage racing at a fantastic Tasmanian circuit to help celebrate Motorama. And if you fans want to give your hand at trying this combination yourself, you've got those sim rigs right there to see if you can be just as fast. It looks like we'll have our little bit of a warm-up, and then we'll be going off into this race in just a couple moments' time. And then we'll go through your starting grid. If the start of last race is anything to go by, buckle up, because this is going to be a wild beginning.
And they're going to be even faster into that, call it turn 1, 2, 3 section. Maybe the Mini Coopers bred a little bit of chaos because they don't have as much horsepower, so they don't get to spread out as much during that acceleration phase. But I think when you put yourself behind the wheel of the Cobra, it almost it invites a move into the brake zone because you got your right foot and you're like, oh, I can go that little bit faster, I can go that little bit further, and then that's when bad things happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, you want to try and limit those bad things in such a short race because there's not going to be much recovering from it. Cars now gridding up. It's time to go through our starting order for race number 2 of this afternoon. And as we had mentioned, Darren Andrews is going to be on the pole for this one. It's going to be another 3-lap race, so it's going to be quite short. There you see Darren Andrews for Baskerville Hobbyist Racing next to Reese Gardner as Ascari Cantonen starts 3rd, and Devin Brown will round out your top 4. Then it's Matt Wright starting in 5th, followed by Max Schrapp in the 6th position. Austin Birchfield will be P7, and Neil Sienkowski rounding out 8th position for Wilkes Sport. After that, Nicholas Kirsten, a little bit farther back there from the win last time. 9th place, Robin DeVos in 10th, David Purchase P11, and Mark Johnson starting in the 12th spot. With the last few cars, Cito Viger starting 13th, Riley Wyans in 14th, and Declan Brush rounding out your 15 cars. And there's the signal for getting ready to go. And there is the green flag. It's time to go racing once again. And this time needing a little bit more of a gentle right foot on the start of the race as they fly down towards the crest of the viaduct. We already got a car once again into the barrier. They're trying to stay out of the way of everyone. Looks like they were able to make it back on safely.
Little bit more single file. Look at arguing over 2nd and 3rd place there. 94 gives room, and now the number 2 car fights back. That's Devin Braun, but we're coming up into the bridge section. It looks like Reese is going to edge ahead. I take that back, and now we got another car spinning off into the right side barriers.
May have been Cito Viger. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll try and get that a little bit later. Gardner very much under threat from Brown, but he's able to rebuff him at least this time. I don't think it's over yet, or did he actually? No, he got by.
But yeah, Devin Braun got into that 2nd place position, so call it that lighter green, that lime green 94 is under attack from Cantonen. Cantonen's going to look to the inside. The next is a right-hander, but the 94 takes it crazy deep on the brakes. Can he get it stopped before getting into the back of Braun? Yes, they all make it through the corner.
This is helping out Darren Andrews, that's for sure. He's trying to pull away as quick as possible. Slipstream won't be as big of a factor, but they're getting to higher speeds, so it'll still punch a pretty big hole in the air. This is what you were referring to as the more technical portion of the lap. You can see him having to slow down. Hopefully they can get their throttle foot down without spinning the tires up too much.
That's where we really saw it bite in qualifying, was probably just being a little bit too happy with the right foot and spinning up those tires. But the sooner you do get the car hooked up, it launches you forward, propels you down this incredibly long flying mile straightaway where you can quite honestly use all the top speed you can get.
Leave the car we lost was Max Schrapp, unfortunately, in the number 16, because he's showing as a DNF now. Under braking, that's a struggle for Devin Braun. He's able to get the car woed up, but turn in for the 72, finds the 31 at the apex. They're going to bang doors. They'll get away with it. The 34, though, and trying to capitalize on that, maybe got a little greedy.
I have to see if Kantonen has any sort of damage on, call it, the right side of his number 72. He was kind of the victim of that red 31. I think that Senkowski just really sanding it up the inside. Couldn't quite get the car stopped away before apex, and doesn't look like any serious damage on the number 72. So they both live to fight another day.
Across Kingsbridge once more they go. We got a little bit of a yellow flag behind them, so someone else has had problems this time in the first sector once again. Kantonen trying to fight back as best he can. Oh, and he slides the rear coming out of the pub and across the train tracks. It does look like that Devin is catching Darren Andrews a little bit in all of this as well.
And I don't know if it's necessarily Devin catching Andrews, or maybe it's the whole pack starting to reel in Darren Andrews up front, and see Kantonen almost pushing Gardner there for that third place. I think that if they're smart, work together and maybe start to apply pressure here with one lap remaining, or at least I should say coming to it soon enough.
Yeah, they're, I guess, about halfway through at this stage, coming up over Long Bridge now. And these three fighting for second place are still very close to one another. They need to catch up to the number 7. That's the one everybody's chasing, Darren Andrews and his machine. And coming off the corner, you can see a big wiggle in the background, I think, with Robin DeVos. So here's what happened to Schrapp. This is on the first lap. He was the one you saw on the silver machine spinning out of Kingsbridge.
I'm loving the camera angles that we're getting. I'm loving the sense of speed that we're getting out of these Cobras. The racing is actually a lot closer than what I thought it was going to be after watching that Mini Cooper race. And this is into the final corner here. So they're all braking, trying to get this thing slowed down. Remember, the red 31 had that big issue last lap. Actually gets passed this lap by, that's Austin Birchfield that took away the position there.
Nicely done, although he was really out of sorts, clipping the grass on his way into the corner, but he held it together in the end. Robin DeVos in the orange machine, now trying to play catch-up to Sentowski in front of him, who, as we saw, had a little bit of a run-in before in that 31, so we don't know what damage is on the car. That is taken into effect here in the sim. You can have little damage, even if it isn't blatantly obvious right now, so you don't want to hurt the suspension, especially, I imagine, under braking with how difficult these cars already look.
Remember, we're already on the last lap. These are only 3-lap sprint races here, so they go by quite quickly. It doesn't matter if you're in the little Mini or in the big old V8 Cobra. I think that Darren Andrews has done a really nice job after kind of maybe falling under threat there in the middle of the second lap to kind of re-establish the pace out front. It seems like, at least right now, he's got a healthy gap.
1.1 seconds as they come up to the braking into Tannery Corner. So it's looking relatively healthy for Andrews, but as we've seen, it's no guarantee. We've seen mistakes from a number of drivers, and you could so easily lose it in any of these final right-handers. Coming up to the braking, Devin still trying to do his best to reel him back in, but just cannot seem to do it at this stage. Reese Gardner still being a thorn in the side of that 0-2.
That lime green 94 is in a little of a peculiar position too, because You need to attack out the windshield out front, but you also have to defend out the mirrors out back. What happened to Matt Wright here in this turquoise 11? This was going right underneath the railroad tracks, just got a little bit in too deep and locked up the rears.
He's spitting out hay for a while from that one. Unfortunately, holy cow! Can he get in the car? Woed up. Devin doing everything he can. Reese is going to be able to get the long way around. He'll use a little bit beyond the track. That actually slips him up. Now he has lost touch as Darren Andrews is going to take the win. But who will finish second on this one? It is a photo finish, but it looks like it's Devin Brown.
It is, and I think that, remember how in qualifying we saw, I believe it was Matt Wright, spin up the tires? Reese Gardner, same thing. He spun up the rear tires coming out of that final corner, Mountford corner, and just lost all sorts of traction, lost all forward drive, and lost second place.
Going to be kicking himself. Did they model a horn on these? Is that what I'm hearing right now?
Absolutely. I love it. It's fantastic.
Oh, so now you can not only flash your headlights at competitors to annoy them, you can honk your horn at them. That is beautiful.
You know, we saw the Mini tumbling on fire going down the hill earlier. I think the horn is just a nice little addition.
They go to great lengths for these cars. So a few less shenanigans here now that they've completed this race. But here's your finishing order. Darren Andrews going to come away with the victory as Devin Brown will be P2. Reese Gardner was so close to getting that second spot. Ascari Canton was P4 behind him. Austin Birchfield, P5. Robin DeVos in 6th, and Neil Stentowski in the 7th spot. After that, you had Cito Viher in the 8th position, with Mark Johnson in 9th, and Declan Brush in that number 42 rounds out your top 10 on the fields. From there on down, David Purchase, no heroics like last time. He'll have to settle for 11th position. Same with Nicholas Kirsten down in 12th, Matt Wright 14th, and Max Schrapp, as we know, those last three a DNF today for race number 2. Race number 3 going to be even more crazy, because now we're going to combine these two cars and they're going to race for overall position. How does that work, you say? Well, it is going to be in a staggered format where they will release the minis, and then about a lap later they are going to release the Cobras, and they will have to try and chase down those minis to see if they can catch them in 5 laps time.
Essentially just kind of time the race mathematically from the checkered flag, and you explained it perfectly. Just stagger those starts. I think the one nervous part, right, if you're in the slower car, meaning the Mini Cooper in this situation, you don't really have much of a defense, right? If you see the Cobra coming up in the mirror, you better hope you're going into that maybe Tannery corner, Newry corner section where you have a few corners to maybe be a speed bump in the road. But once you get out onto these long straightaways, it's pretty much going to be the Cobras blowing by the Minis.
Exactly, which makes me wonder, Joey, if you were out there, would you try and work together a little bit if you're in the minis? You know, get a little draft train going and some bump drafting Talladega style?
So when I was making my point, my brain kind of wandered. Like, how do you hold up a Cobra in a situation like this?
Oh, my goodness.
I think that, right, now you're picking up what I'm putting down over here, Joe. Yes, you could work together to try to run away, but what's better than running away is blocking a road, right?
The two semis in front of them, except a lot smaller.
You talked about, what was it, Dukes of Hazzard maybe earlier? Maybe a little snowman, Smokey and the Bandit?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Block it up with the semis?
Oh, boy. I hope they aren't listening. Don't need to give them any ideas, because this is going to be insane if we see that sort of situation, especially if they go to the lengths of actually putting them, 4 wide and into the grass or something to try to cover them off. Because, I mean, there's nothing that says you couldn't try and just completely block it entirely up. But if they don't, then get ready for a wild ride if we see those Cobras have to dirt track it going around and off the pavement to somehow get through. And looking through...
I am being a little bit facetious over here. We're not going to get the minis clogging the road, being roadblocks over there. But if you were asking me truly in the spirit of competition, that's probably what would be the best to try to get the checkered flag.
Well, yeah, there's no points on the line here, so this is kind of a for fun race for this series. So I could see it happening. They do have standards, so I don't know if maybe they have a rule against that already. We'll have to check with some of the organizers.
I would think gentlemanly probably would go against it. It is good fun, and in the sim, I think it can be organized, and in the real world, you have the safety aspect of it too, so you approach it completely differently. But I think when we're looking forward to this specific race that we're about to see on the screen, it's going to get a little bit chaotic. Going into those brake zones, especially just the speed difference is going to be very, very drastic.
Yeah, that's for sure. What we said, it was a little over 200 kilometers an hour for the minis, and we saw 293 and above for the Cobras. So it'll be quite the closing rate. I'll have to try and figure out what that is in miles per hour for our feeble American brains. But
I know 300K is about 185-ish or so.
Whew, wow. In 1960s technology, that's terrifying. So, all right. Well, we'll have that in just a moment. Let me double check on the timing here of what we've got coming for that next race, because I know we do have a little bit of a warm-up to send them off for that one.
And question for you, Joe. I'm not sure if you actually know this or not, because since we just watched the Mini Cooper race and then we just watched the Cobra race, do you know how they are splitting up the drivers between the two cars and dictating who's driving what?
I don't know how it was chosen, but I can, on our timing and scoring, I can see who's logged into what right now. So I can give you an idea. Brush, Andrews, Birchfield, Purchase, Vire, DeVos, and Santowski are in Cobras. Kirsten, Johnson, Wright, Gardner, Brown, Cantonen, Wyan, Schrapp, and James are in Mini Coopers. So there's your split. We'll try and pick that apart in a bit. In the meantime, we're going to take a short break. We've got a commercial here. We'll be back after this to bring you our third race of the afternoon here at Motorama.
Did you hear that Taz Petroleum Motorama is on bigger and better?
Is that just a guy thing?
It's for the whole family with something for everyone. Motorama is more than just cars and bikes.
Can we go? Can we go? Our rides are free.
Sure thing. Let's get our tickets.
Yay!
Get your heart racing and your adrenaline pumping at Taz Petroleum Motorama. October 26th to 27th, Simmons Plains Raceway. Go to motoramataz.com.au for tickets.
G'day guys, welcome to Motorama, a throwback to the great days of racing in Tasmania from 1953 through to 1968 at the wonderful Longford racetrack. Bit over 4 miles of racetrack, the fastest track in the Southern Hemisphere, attracted 7 Formula One world champions in that period of time. Today and tomorrow, you get to race on this fabulous piece of track in cars from the era. Wish you all good luck, have fun with it, and enjoy Longford.
Welcome back. Glad to see fans still enjoying the sim rigs here at Motorama. We're watching the HRSC compete at Longford, a classic Tasmanian course. And with classic cars, if you've been watching, we've seen the minis, we've seen the Cobras, and now we're going to see the minis and the Cobras together competing. And again, if you want to give these a try, you can hop on over to these sim rigs and give it a whirl. and give it a try. You were talking about the 2-foot method. I like this because I know there's a lot of talk about different footwear for sim racing. We've got a Crocs wear. That's a first that I've never seen before.
I, I see that as well. And I'm not sure who the gentleman is there that's helping everybody, but that is everybody's favorite best friend today. The guy that is running the simulators that can put you in the simulator and let you have some fun out there. So really props to him. I know it's not always easy to be standing out there and letting everybody else have fun. So thank you very much. You're allowing for everybody out there at Motorama to have a fun time on the simulator while we essentially get to watch it, commentate on it, and enjoy the excitement that everybody else is getting to have.
I'm being told that is Wuchu, who is helping folks get onto the Sims and getting going. He's helped organize this event. So big thank you to Wuchu for all that you're doing over there and introducing folks to the world of sim racing. We've got a few moments left before we get to the qualifying for the Mini versus Cobra handicap race, as we're going to be calling it. And then we'll have open wheelers with F1 and F3 racing more traditionally, just all together in one. And that will be at half past the hour. But actually, yeah, it's showing 14:55 locally. So that's technically right now when we should be having that race. So we're maybe just a couple minutes behind, but we're in the warm-up. In case you haven't been paying attention to what we're racing on, here is the track map of Longford. This is the 1967 version of the circuit as it's modeled here in rFactor. Only 9 corners and over 4.5 miles or 7.2 kilometers for the metric folks out there. Like we said earlier, Joey, it looks simple, but it's anything but when you get down on the pavement.
And I think since we've been able to kind of watch it a little bit, we can talk about it a little bit more. You can see where the arrow is. We're just coming out of Montford Corner. That is your start-finish line. So on these standing starts, they get them all lined up right there, drop the green flag. And where we saw all of the Mini Cooper destruction was down into that first section called the viaduct down there. That's where it feeds underneath the racetrack. So it's kind of a downhill section into that turn number 1, 2, and 3. And then in between the viaduct and Longford Corner, you go across Kings Bridge. We've seen several of the drivers outbrake themselves into Tannery Corner. And then I would say kind of most famously, that very, very final corner, Mountford Corner, that's where we saw the cars get in way, way, way too deep on the opening lap of the mini race, but I would say that's kind of to be expected off of a straightaway called Flying Mile.
And I was just reminded of something because we're not actually doing qualifying. I had forgotten here. This is warm-up straight to the race. It is going to be determined by the finishing order of the races. So where you finished in the car that you're racing in this one, you're going to be starting on the grid with your fellow drivers for this one. So that's going to be fun to watch for those that maybe were slightly out of position and were a little bit quicker. The DNF cars in particular, I'm thinking of, are going to have a fun time trying to come to the back. So again, up next, Mini versus Cobra handicap race. We'll send off the Minis first, and then the Cobras will take off roughly one lap later. So, you're talking about some of the features around you. You mentioned the viaduct. I do love the Australian sense of humor in the Discord chat before the race. Some of the Australian drivers in HRSC were joking that the track was shut down because it was too dangerous, not because of the cars running into things, but because of a nest of drop bears hiding under that overhang.
Classic. Yes. Well, looks like we've got just under a minute left here in the warm-up, so everybody is getting ready to go racing. You saw the 2 cars there on the screen between the Mini Cooper and the big old rumbly boy V8 AC Cobra that'll be racing out there. I gotta ask you, Joe, since you always ask me the racing questions. If you had to pick one or the other, which do you think you would pick for a race like this?
Oh, man. That's honestly genuinely tough because both seem really appealing. Like you said, the minis look just like ridiculous fun, but the Cobras will definitely remind me of, racing in the Lotus 49 like I often race in virtual vintage sims. So I guess I got to go with the Cobra just because I feel like I could make a difference with just keeping from wrecking the thing off. That's where my strength usually is just keeping the car on the road and finishing the race.
I love them both. I started racing in Spec Miatas, call it momentum cars. Jenetta's very similar to it. So it kind of relates to that little Mini Cooper. And then I spent a lot of time in front engine, rear drive V8. So I understand both of them.
All right, so we're going to try and see if we got a grid here. Looks like Nicholas Kirsten going to be on the pole with Reese Gardner in second. That'll be Mark Johnson third and Gary James fourth. And this might be a little mixed up because you can see we've already got a Mini in there. Then you've got Matt Wright, P5, Riley Wyans in sixth, and Ascari Cantonen in the seventh position. Devin Brown will start in the eighth spot. From there, Max Schrapp in ninth, Darren Andrews P10, followed by Austin Birchfield in 11th and Robin DeVos in the 12th position. From there, we've got Neil Santowski P13, Cito Vire in the 14th position, Declan Brush 15th, and David Purchase rounding out our 16-car fields. Looks like we are ready to go as the cars get the signal. Now we wait for the green flag, and the green flag is out. Everybody mashing the pedal down in these minis. They know they cannot waste a fraction of a second on this lap.
You see the Cobras patiently waiting. These minis will do this whole entire lap, and then once they see them approaching that final corner, that's when the Cobras will get their green flag. But down the hill into the chaos viaduct for the first time. This is where it all unraveled in the opening race.
Oh, and we've already got two cars off into the barriers, three of them as well before they even get to the bridge. But it is Nicholas Kirsten, it looks like, that is able to come out ahead of the group and trying his best to run away. He is absolutely chucking that car.
I think it was the 18 and the 9. That was Gary James and Mark Johnson. Those were the two cars that made contact into that viaduct corner. But like you heard Joe say, it is Kirsten out front with Reese Gardner in a very familiar second place. It seems like that green number 94 is just kind of drawn to the second place position.
So we'll get a second look at it. And 18 just got loose under braking. 9 was kind of an innocent victim. So that's Mark Johnson causing quite the dismay at the start of our 5-lap handicap race.
Perfectly called there. It just was that number 18 out way too wide, call it off of the racing line, and got loose on the brakes. And remember, when you're on the brakes, you got all the weight on the front end of the vehicle. It already likes to be loose, and front-wheel drive cars, they just kind of trend that direction. But a little bit further back in the back of the pack here, looks like we've got a 3-pack of cars. Looks like led by the number 9. That's Gary James recovering, and then Riley Wyans and Devin Braun make up this 3-pack.
Going very wide there, Gary James, but he gets his foot back in the throttle. We're getting close to the start of our Cobras. Once they round that last corner, that is the signal to go, and all of the Cobras will take off, and they have 5 laps to try and catch these cars that now have to run 4 laps as we might have a change for the lead. Reese Gardner is wasting no time and trying to put himself back to the top spot here. So what's it going to look like? He had it taken away from him at the start of the last time he came into this corner in the minis. Will he be able to safely get through Mountford?
I think it's quite amusing to watch because the straightaway is long enough that they can do the double draft, and now the number 10 really parks it at the apex, and green flag for the Cobra. So they put the hammer down. It's 3 wide. We got contact on the front straightaway already. They're going to have to get it sorted because this is the narrow section of the racetrack.
And it's downhill as well. A curved braking zone coming in through the little kink, and then a swift left-right underneath the viaduct. This is a lot more orderly than what we saw with the minis. They know that they cannot waste time, and Darren Andrews leads the way of the Cobras.
I think that is key for the Cobras. The more that you mess around, aka we saw the minis get into some, call it scuffles, they're slowing themselves down in terms of lap time. The cleaner you are out there, single file, the faster you're moving forward. So the key, I would say, at least early on, advantage going to the Cobras.
Kirsten still leads. Gardner was not able to complete that lap, kicking up a little bit of dust, exiting out of Longford Corner, and he's pulling the slipstream. Boy, they have gapped Cantonen by a pretty big margin. It's up to about 3 seconds back there, and if they do work together, it's going to be harder for him to try and run them down, but nope, they are not interested in working together. Reese Gardner wants that lead.
Using the slipstream, it's going to put him on the wrong side of the road, though, so Kirsten being on the right side in that purple number 10 has the advantage as long as he can stay up alongside, but seems like Reese has already cleared him by the braking zone, carries maximum speed through that open radius, and now through that more technical section as we check back in on the Cobras, going side by side between Visor and Andrews.
Will Cito get that lead away? He's going to be wheel to wheel as they head towards Tannery here. There's a little bit of a slight right jink in the braking zone, so it's a little bit harder than you'd imagine coming into there. So as they get onto the binders, oh my goodness, things getting all out of sorts. No, this isn't a Mountford, excuse me, that's not into Tannery. So that's the end of the lap. It is going to be Andrews who leads the way over the one car of Visor.
Now, I'm really curious as they complete their lap where the front of the minis are with Reese and Kirsten. So this is them heading down into what looks like Tannery Corner, the corner that you were mentioning. And actually, no, this is on the Flying Mile straightaway. So they've made some good progress here. The minis might actually have a shot at this one.
Yeah, they're not that far behind, at least not. I thought it would be a little bit closer at this stage. Gary James is going to duck down to the inside in the 9. Oh, can he make the corner? He does barely, although they'll make some contact, both of them off into the grass as they emerge back on. That is Riley Wyans also chasing that gold machine.
The number 2 car getting, I think, mixed up in it here. As you kind of start, I believe this is lap number 3 for the Mini Coopers here. Head downhill into this viaduct section. This is the area that we've really seen kind of bite the Mini Coopers, and I don't know if it has to do with the front-wheel drive nature and just kind of how loose they are on the brake pedal. The number 9, once again, in there really deep, but kind of able to recover and keep it on the racetrack.
But it's made this now a 3-way fight because it looks like Johnson is fully caught up to
What
them.
happened to Nicholas Kirsten? Nicholas Kirsten is no longer... Oh, my goodness, and more problems. Number 9 car is having issues down into Tannery Corner. I'm sorry to be distracting over here, but Kirsten was one of our leaders, and he is no longer.
And Wyans moves up to 3rd with that move. Yeah, so Kirsten is in 8th position and is well behind. So he must have had some sort of serious problem, like you said. Meanwhile, we check back in with Andrews and Visor. They're side by side once more, not willing to work together. Both of them on the absolute limit of grip, braking into Mountford. And it looks like the 7 will be able to pull ahead, but it's going to be a matter of who is smoother on the throttle.
You see the number 1 just laying down the roasties, trying to leave the corner, and that's not the fast way if you're trying to propel yourself forward. It's just so cool, really, to see these big V8s and just laying down the treads, leaving the corners. It's a handful to drive, and honestly, it's kind of making me jealous. It looks fun.
It does look like an absolute blast, and yet we're still in the dark on whether or not they are going to manage to catch those minis for the end. Remember, this is overall winner, and they've handicapped these Cobras to try and run them down. So here's what happened to Kirsten. Oh, no! Oh, and a major hit due to the curb, tipping the car over.
I did not expect to see that one, and then off into the
river, apparently.
Depths of the river he goes, and Nicholas Kirsten is going to have to find his way back to pit lane with a very soggy race car.
Well, that was not the adventure he was looking for on this one, but this gives a great advantage to Reese Gardner. Nobody's fighting him now. It's a 5-second gap up at the front of the minis. Andrews is not that far ahead. Oh, and we've got more battles down in a Mountford with Schrapp having a little contact.
It seems like the way to get through in a few of these brake zones is just kind of going a little bit too deep, and 8 tires certainly stops a whole lot better than 4. We saw the number 2 car, I believe, that was making a little bit of a move. That's Devin Braun getting by Riley Wyans, and then also Gary James and Max Schrapp kind of duking it out. Remember, Max didn't finish the first opening mini race, and now Gary gets into the back of him. Oh my goodness, Max was able to hold it on the racetrack, but Gary went off into the hay bales and now kind of recovers.
Max did a good job not running into the wall of the viaduct because he was given a shot in the back, so he was probably going faster than he anticipated up to that point and nearly using up more than the track on the way into the braking of Longford Corner, trying to run away from the 13 of Riley Wyans. That's Devin Brown in the 02, up onto the podium positions currently, but well off the lead, about 8 seconds away from Reese Gardner.
I really like what you said just a minute ago about best case scenario for Reese Gardner up front, because he doesn't have the pressure, right? He doesn't have to worry about racing anybody. He doesn't have to worry about anybody coming up in the mirror. And quite honestly, the more the mini pack kind of goes behind him and trails further behind him, that's going to make for more traffic for the Cobras to have to work through, as we see the number 18 car, that's Mark Johnson, having some problems after the Longford Bridge heading into that Newry corner section.
Off into the barbed wire he goes, unfortunately, to join the cows, as he's going to have trouble getting that to a good finishing position. Riley Wyans still chasing for that 3rd position now that he's lost it from Devin Brown, seeing if he can gather him back up. This is on lap, 4 out of 5. So I think we should be getting the white flag for 1 to go. Where is our leaders in the Cobras here?
So here's Reese, our leader in the mini, and he's going to be coming up to Mountford Corner. He's going to be jumping on the brakes here actually right now, slowing down. So he will be clicking over to the final lap. And just like I'm curious with what your point is, where is the leader of those minis, or of the Cobras, I should say? This is leading out onto the Flying Mile straightaway section.
So is the horsepower there? That's the question, because they've got the long straights to help them catch them up, but is it going to be enough? And they're going to have to navigate through the traffic of these back marker minis before they even think about the win.
If you ask me, no. I think if I was to judge right now, I do not think that the number 7 car of Darren Andrews can reach Reese Gardner in 1 lap time.
So the difference between the cars was somewhere around 30 seconds, I believe, roughly that. So was he about 30 seconds? He's showing
just the closing rate on it is wild to watch.
It is just incredible, and he's pushing. For reference, I'm showing it about 30 seconds right now, but that's after he's crossed the start-finish line. So it's going to be close, but I think you're right. I don't think he's going to have enough lap.
The big difference, too, is you have to be a little bit more careful passing these cars. So maybe if it's a 30-second gap on optimal pace for both, it might lean towards the Mini, because the Cobra has to attack and maybe won't be able to make its absolute optimal pace. But it's starting to close up.
All right. We're coming down to just a few corners to go to decide race number 3. Will the Minis survive, or are they going to be gobbled up by these hungry Cobras? Coming down to the braking, you can see some defense here from the 16, just trying to hold him up as much as he can.
Do it. Yeah, get your buddies out there, get the Mini Cooper the win, and This is heading up in through the Kingsbridge, I'm sorry, through Longbridge here up into Newry Corner. That's the number 13 that's directly in front. That's Riley Wyans. He's our 4th place runner in the Mini Coopers. It is just one long monster straightaway now.
It's 17 seconds the difference. I just don't think there's enough in that car to catch him, although he could be
little
in a
94.
P2. Reese Gardner, he didn't get the win in either of the Cobras or the Minis, but it's the combined that he's looking at finally coming away with the victory. There he is in the background. He is approaching. He's catching fast, but I don't know that it's going to be enough. It'll be tight. Who is going to be better on the brakes as he exits the final corner? Coming back at him, the better braking, the lighter car, the 72, is going to try and steal that one away, but that's not going to work. It is going to be Reese Gardner taking victory here today in the handicap race.
You love seeing Cantonen fight it back in the brake zone. Darren Andrews finishes 2nd. So he's the first of the Cobras, and then it goes back to the Mini Coopers of Cantonen, and then Visor there in the Cobra. So flip-flopping for the entire top 4. Very well done.
I was going to say, they timed that out to perfection. I'm looking down through the field, and it is very evenly dispersed amongst them. So, yeah, the organizers got that just right as our drivers are now going to celebrate off into
what do you think Reese's mindset was? What do you think was going through his brain there that last flying mile straightaway, knowing that Cobra was definitely on its way?
Probably don't think about it. Focus on your brake marker. Focus on the brake marker. Think about what you're doing, not what they're doing. And that wound up giving him the victory. As we take a look at the results, Reese Gardner, your winner over Darren Andrews, who came home 2nd. Then Cantonen was P3. Visor was 4th. And then Neil Santowski behind him in 5th. Third of our Minis was Devin Brown, but finished 6th overall. Riley Wyans behind him in 7th, and Max Schrapp in 8th. David Purchase P9, and then Austin Birchfield in 10th. From there, you get to drivers that had a few difficulties today. Gary James in 11th, Robin DeVos P12, Nick Kirsten in 13th, Matt Wright 14th, Brush 15th, and Johnson in 16th. Only 2 DNFs, but definitely a few incidents out there. So, okay, we finished the sports cars, the touring cars, and we're headed off to Formula cars up next. These are the real, truly scary beasts that we've got out there. The Cobras were fast, but these are both fast and light.
And to see the little preview of them here on the screen, and yeah, the best of both worlds, right? Kind of miniature, like a Mini Cooper, not shaped like a Mini Cooper per se, but incredibly light on its feet. And then you have a big old honking motor that's pushing you along. It is kind of most similar to, Joe, like the Lotus 49s that we are very, very familiar with.
Indeed. We've called lots of races of those cars over on iRacing, but this is the Brabham is what they've modeled from the 1967 year. And then I'm not sure if it was a specific model of Formula 3 car. I'd have to check to see if that's what, if they have a very specific chassis that they have run that after, if it's just kind of a generic one that's to that rule set from this era. But they did have races like that back in the day where it was a mix of cars between different formulas. They didn't have the Australian Grand Prix officially in the World Championship, Joey, until the 80s. So when they did actually run the Australian GP down here at Longford back in the 60s, it was a non-championship round, but it was run to Formula One rules.
I don't think it matters what cars are being put on a racing circuit. As long as you got cars going around a racetrack, it's going to be a party, especially call it on the other side of the world and on the other side of the hemisphere. I feel like here in North America, we definitely have fun. But you go and you look at Australia, New Zealand, all the racing that gets done down there. Seems like the parties that get attached to it, they have a lot of fun on their weekends too. It kind of makes me jealous, really.
I've heard stories of certain beverages being buried in the ground at Bathurst so that they can dig them up come race time. So yeah, there's all kinds of shenanigans going on.
I also just feel like the fans, right? They're really passionate about the sport. Here in North America, sure, we have really good fans and they come out to see it, but it just seems like elsewhere in the world you have really passionate fans that are there to see the car and be part of the weekend itself, not necessarily there to get a suntan and take pictures, but there to see the racing action.
Exactly, yeah, and that's one thing that I'm a bit jealous of is like you said, the car culture that Australia has down there. It seems like people are just really into it. I know it's very big here in the States, but I'm glad to see that it's happening recently. I've long been calling for more road courses for NASCAR because that's, to me, from my experience and getting to know supercars in the last number of years following motorsports from around the world, it's always felt like if they took NASCAR onto road courses. And that's what I love about it. It's so rough and tumble. It is just incredible vehicles with so much power and so much weight underneath them. And yet they're trying to take them around all the twisty, tricky tracks. And it just makes it so much fun to watch.
I think that's one cool aspect of racing over there. Another cool aspect of car culture that I really enjoy from the Australian side of things is the Japanese market. You know, they're so close to Japan over there that all of those cars really have been readily available through the 70s, through the 80s, and through the 90s. And as a, call it a JDM fanboy here in North America, we never got access to any of that. So not only the V8 supercars and a lot of the modern racing technology that is adopted from some of the stuff here in North America, but you also have that huge Japanese fan base that's literally just kind of right next door.
So here's a question for you. Have you ever seen the original Mad Max?
Oh, you know, I did growing up, but Joe, it's probably been 25 years since I saw the original Mad Max, yeah.
I only watched it for the first time a couple years ago, so I got to really appreciate it and just enjoy the amazing cars they also have in that film too. So you can't talk about car culture in Australia without at least bringing that up once. But yeah, it's really given us some absolute gems that we appreciate around the world. I can testify here from North America that we are watching, and Australia has made themselves known or the rest of the around the rest of the globe in terms of motorsports. But Cito Voyager here in the Brabham Motorsports F1 car, now bringing it through the long bridge. We're going to actually check out Cito as well, just in front of him as he comes through Newry Corner.
Really fun to watch the open wheel cars with the suspension and the arms and the shock absorbers, the springs compressing, getting to really watch all of that geometry go to work over what really is a road circuit. We kind of get spoiled with Formula cars now being on all these FIA tracks that are, call it laser grade flat. It's kind of fun to watch them move around a little bit, just like how I was mentioning. It's fun to watch the Mini Coopers. It's fun to watch the Cobras squirm trying to get all of that horsepower down to the ground. It is fun to watch these Formula cars as well.
100%. And as we ride on board with Nicholas Kirsten, this is double checking to see if he is in the Brabham, or if it looks like he's in the Brabham instead of the F3. I'm seeing that is the Eve F3 is what I've got on our timing and scoring. So I assume that is the model that they are currently running that one in. Kirsten is running in the F3, and we're waiting for qualifying times to be set here. So expect these cars to kind of mostly sort out into order, because there's definitely a lot more power underneath the Brabham.
Yeah, I think that's most noticeable, right? The Brabham is just kind of putting the foot down. There is a little bit of a size difference. Nice. Up and over. We'd made the comment the Cobra is jumping over the railroad tracks, but I think the Brabham might actually have enough speed and horsepower that we're getting all four wheels off of the ground. I'd also be curious to see what the top speed is on one of these. You had mentioned almost 300 clicks in terms of the Cobra. These open wheel cars, I'm sure, are at least that fast, if not more.
Yeah, I'm showing Neil Santowski at 290 kilometers per hour right now. And yeah, a couple other drivers hitting that. So yeah, pretty much the same speeds. But again, these cars are much lighter. So you're going to be seeing very short lap times in comparison. Not dramatically faster, but the corners are going to be less of an issue for Formula cars, which are much lower to the ground and have a lot less weight to try and steer.
I think if you're new to sim racing, or if you're over there at Motorama and trying the different types of cars, if they have the Mini and if they have the Cobra and if they have the, call it these Formula cars, the Formula cars might feel the most, call it video game-like, right? They're going to have the most amount of grip on the brakes. They're going to have the most amount of grip on the gas. And they're also going to have the most amount of grip through the corner. So they might also be the easiest to drive. But with all that speed comes responsibility. If you go too fast, you can go flying off the racetrack just as easy.
Cito, who just crossed the line, puts himself up into second. Yeah, we're looking at 209s. So I believe that's about 4 or 5 seconds quicker per lap compared to what we saw with the Cobras there. Brown now takes the fastest time off of Cito, down to a 209.4. Fastest of our F3s, Nicholas Kirsten with a 237.
Maybe even these F3 cars using a little bit of draft. I don't expect the Brabhams to be drafting each other in qualifying, but maybe the little F3 cars being downer, or I shouldn't say downer, more down on horsepower, can actually use the draft a little bit in qualifying.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it does appear to be open qualifying, so they could try and use some tricks. As I think that was a 16 with a bit of an issue. That would be Max Schrapp. He currently sits in 4th, so he'll get back out onto the track. And Riley Wyans with a big knock into the wall coming through Long Bridge.
It certainly looked like he tagged it pretty good, and then, really struggling to put the power down. I wouldn't be surprised maybe if he's struggling with a little bit of a broken suspension too. So we saw that area of the racetrack, call it Newry Corner, trying to exit the Newry Corner section, be struggle with the AC Cobra. I just think with the horsepower, the tires, and the drivers being a little bit greedy, it's combining for a tricky section.
Boy, watching that onboard, I can only imagine, because remember, these 67 cars did run here. It just wasn't an official round. Can you imagine being at those speeds, wind going across your face, just the goggles between yourself and that smacking you as you get ready to try and spot your braking point, and then either side is just spectators, as the 18 goes a little bit deep, spectators and fencing and trees just blasting past you.
No. No, I can't imagine myself doing that. I think it all comes with the times, right? And it's all relative. You put yourself in a competitive environment, and if that's what the safety standards are and that's what the equipment is, then okay, then it's okay for the times. Now, we look back on it and say, no, that is horribly unsafe. I would never climb into that thing. But it is relative. But to put it into perspective, the manufacturing processes back then are not what they are now. The safety standards back then are not what they are now. The drivers wrestled with death constantly in these machines, and it could be from a perfectly okay race car. Everything could be perfect one lap, and then just machining tolerances could have a part failure and all of a sudden catastrophic the next. So it really was kind of like a dice roll in some situations.
Was no doubt just supremely frightening for these drivers. They definitely were brave back in these days. As we watch with Nicholas Hillebrand currently sitting in 10th. He's our fastest of the F3s now with 1.5 minutes left to go. He's taken the top away from Kirsten by about 0.3 of a second. behind them, it's massively separated with the rest of the field. Some of the drivers as far as 2 seconds apart.
Going down one of these straightaways here in this number 70. I do admit it sounds pretty good. Brabham might be up a little bit in terms of top speed, but sometimes it's a little bit more about smiles per corner. And this car, this F3 car that Hillebrand is driving, it looks pretty hooked up. It looks fun to drive.
It does. I'd be curious to give it a try, because might be a lot of fun in the sense that, yeah, you've got all that power on the F1 car, but with the less power, you can really probably whip this thing through the corners. We're definitely seeing Hillebrand do that, willing to get it a little bit sideways, as you can slide these and still be relatively fast enough. This was before the era of wings. This was really the last year before they started to show up and aerodynamics became a factor in terms of downforce. 67 was considered one of the fastest and craziest years in terms of Formula One, just because of, as we said, the speeds got so high and safety hadn't quite caught up, and the cars just danced around. And you can definitely see that with the way that Reese Gardner is having to deal with the handling of this car.
I think what I like seeing out of this green 94 on this race is that he was in the slower class in call it the Cobra versus Mini Cooper race, and now he's hopped over into the faster car. So one of the beautiful parts about sim racing, we talked about recreating the cars, recreating the racetracks, and you can also have it kind of go full circle over there, be in some slow cars, be in some fast cars, do a little bit of everything tonight.
Exactly. It's you don't need a trailer with 20 different cars in them. You just show up to your rig and you can hop in which one you want to try and drive. Checkered flag is out. See, looks like 15th place Mark Johnson going to be amongst our first to cross the line, and it doesn't look like he's improved. We'll continue to watch Reese Gardner here. He sits in third with about a third of a second, actually, to make up for the pole position.
I just was checking those times, and yeah, holy smokes, look at the top four in these Brabhams. Only, call it 37 hundredths of a second separating the top four, and Reese is on a good lap. He was purple in Sector 1, just slightly slower than his fastest in Sector 2, it looks like. He's shooting for that 2:08.03. That's the top of the board. He's got one brake zone in one corner to try to make it up.
Down into Mountford. Is this going to be better for him? Was quick in the first sector. Seems relatively quick in the second sector, even though it's not the fastest of anybody. But he needs a good final sector. He'll cross the line. And where does it put him? Second place by 22 thousandths of a second off the pole.
That's wild. The top three between Cito up there, Reese, and Ascari only call it a tenth of a second to include Devin Braun. I mean, less than half of a second separating that top four.
Wow. So looks like 17 cars once again going to be competing. We've gained another friend out there for this one. So we only had 16 before. But they'll grid up in just a moment here. I think we'll get another little bit of warm-up before we go to the actual race. And this one will, again, be 5 laps, since the lap times have now ducked down to be much, much shorter. And again, all these cars essentially competing together instead of the staggered start that we had before. So you could see them mixed up depending on what happens to the back of our F1 field and drivers running into issues today.
I'm a little curious. I'm a little bit nervous as well. Those Brabham cars were really, really fast. They're going to be accelerating downhill into that viaduct section on the opening lap, obviously. What chaos awaits those railroad tracks? We've seen even in qualifying, it kind of bites some cars. We saw it bite Nicholas Kirsten in that combined race with the Mini Coopers. Remember, he went up and over onto his roof and then eventually into the river. And now everybody is packed into these Formula cars. Maybe the F3's a little bit more well-mannered, I should say. But those Brabhams, it's grip the steering wheel and go for it.
Yeah, and well, with open wheels, I mean, it's going to be so much easier to get tangled with one another, and they're kind of known for being a lot more fragile than the sports cars. So hopefully we'll have not that many DNFs out there, but I wouldn't be too shocked if we didn't get all 17 to the checkered flag, Joey.
The other big difference between the race that we saw earlier, the two production cars, they have a pretty big speed difference, and not only the straightaways, but also in the corners. These cars, they're actually pretty similar everywhere except for the straightaway. So into those narrow sections, what is the patience going to be like from the drivers in the Brabhams when they run up on those F3s, when they kind of run up on the back of them? Going to have to be patient.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's going to change the dynamic of the sort of multi-class racing that we've got going on here today. And drivers will have to pay attention to that. No doubt. I think they won't quite catch up unless we have some real problems with some of those at the back of the F3 field, because we saw it was about 30 seconds and the 5 laps allowed the Cobras to lap them just about in time. So this one looks to be something more like 20 seconds. So I think we might still see them catch the tail end of that field, but we'll cross that bridge when we reach it, I suppose, and see what it winds up looking like. So far, I don't know about you, Joey, but I'm enjoying it. I hope all of our fans at Motorama are really enjoying themselves, because this has been an absolute blast here with the sim racing this afternoon.
It's a ton of fun. You mentioned going to cross the bridge when we get there. Is it going to be Kingsbridge or Longbridge that you're going to be crossing?
I wondered if you would take it that direction, but it's going to be one or the other, that's for sure.
It has to be.
Here's our starting grid with Cito Vizor on the pole, Reese Gardner starting in second. You could disregard the pictures. Canton in third, and Devin Brown will be starting in P4. It'll be Max Schrapp in fifth, Darren Andrews in P6, and Neil Santowski in seventh. Matt Wright will be P8. Then from there, we get down to ninth place, where you've got Riley Wyans. And then Nicholas Hillebrand is outside in 10th. Nicholas Kirsten starts in 11th today, as Austin Birchfield will be in the 12th position. A few more cars as David Purchase starts 13th, Robin DeVos 14th, and Mark Johnson 15th. And it's Declan Brush in P16. And Gary James will round out your field of 17. There's the signal. We're getting ready to go, and the green flag is out. They'll accelerate away. You can see how difficult it is as Reese Gardner nearly loses it just in a straight line off of the start-finish, and that's going to cost him as Oskari Kantonen's going to be able to take that P2.
And down into this hill section, you got to jump on the brakes, and this is where it gets narrow side by side. For second place, the number 2 is going to come out ahead there in second. Reese slips all the way down to fourth.
Meanwhile, there's our F3 field carrying on. Austin Birchfield up at the front of them. A few cars just trying to cut that corner as close as they can. That's Hillebrand, who's trying to take that lead back away once again. Oh, and we have cars that are getting into one another and seriously getting into one another. The F1 Swan is tumbling towards the railroad tracks.
And then you saw on the right side of the screen, Hillebrand and Birchfield definitely got into it as well in that Longford corner. So in both classes, both open wheel cars getting the elbows out early.
That was Schrapp and Andrews who are out of this race before they can even complete the first lap. Declan Brush down in the F3s has called it an early checkered flag as well. But up at the front, Devin Brown is leading with Cito Vizor just in behind him. Oskari Kantonen trying to challenge, and Reese Gardner ruining that early mistake all the way down to fourth before the first lap is over.
I have my eye on the white number 72 in third place. I was kind of expecting Kantonen to be threatened a little bit more for the wins today, and we just haven't seen him up there in order to kind of take the lead of the race. Is this going to be the opportunity that he needs? Because remember, our pole sitter actually got passed as well, so Devin Braun leading this race was not the fastest car in qualifying.
It's a good catch on that one. He'll try and get back up to them. He locks the brakes down into the final corner, but thankfully is able to make it through behind them. Matt Wright going fully off into the dirt out of Mountford. Your leader after one lap, Devin Brown, Visor giving chase.
This is the F3s coming up into that Mountford corner. They're a little bit more packed close together. So this is Hillebrand and Birchfield arguing over first place. And you also have David Purchase in the third place. The number 70 locks up. That's going to be in way too deep. Problems actually for all three of them.
Wow. Bizarre happenings here at the end of the first lap. Hillebrand loses a bunch of places. It is David Purchase who is now our leader. DeVos will take over second place. But look at that. He has got a lot of hungry cars behind him. That's Johnson, Hillebrand, and James.
I mean, what was the top three going into the corner is no longer the top three. There's the incident between Schrapp and I believe that was the 94 and then the number 7 also getting involved. There was the heavy incident after the initial contact.
Oh, more issues. Oh, no. Down into the wall. That was Hillebrand, who has ended his race, it looks like. I thought I saw the wheel come off, so... or is he still going? No, he's still going.
I think it was Mark Johnson in the number 18 car that we just saw.
So, Hillebrand able to carry on, in fact, challenging on DeVos. Wow, look at that, coming off the corner. Out accelerates him, and by a significant margin, he's pulling away already.
These little F3 cars are feisty, aren't they? They're kind of surprising me. The character that's involved with them, the drivers definitely being aggressive with them, and the cars allowing that as we have an attempted pass for the lead up front between our two front runners.
Cito gets to the inside. Can he finish the job is the question. Brown's been leading since the end of lap 1. And as they come around Mountford, he's going to try to cross him over, and he does so successfully. That was smooth from the number 2.
And I don't know if you caught that, but Kantonen just got in way too deep into the final corner, so he gives up third, and now the draft games ensue again. Cito's going to try to go the long way around. Devin Braun's on the inside here. This is going to get tricky. They both jump down the downhill, still side by side. I think Visor's going to have the inside going underneath the railroad tracks, but Devin hangs tough somehow.
I mean, if the F3s are feisty, how would you describe the F1s? That was incredible driving down into the viaduct. No contact between them. Respect shown, but no quarter asked nor given as they come down into the pub and out of Longford Corner. It's a drag race once again between the 1 and 2 cars.
And Kantonen, heavy contact in the background of that shot there. I think he is going to be a DNF in that Brabham car, so take him out of the race. The number 1 car leads the slipstream for the number 2. I'm also seeing that lime green 94 slowly start to close it in the more these two battle.
Already 5 DNFs in this race. Once again, they're going to go side by side. Nobody is willing to give in on this one. This is incredible racing. And Reese Gardner is loving it because he's gaining hand over fist. Big slide there for Cito. He catches the car, but the damage is done. He's now firmly second.
Look at the chassis really just kind of bury themselves in these compression sections of the racetrack. And this is coming out of that Newry corner section. So it is just put the right foot to the floor and see how fast you can go.
So Gary James also with problems making contact.
That was the opening top 3 cars going into that final corner. Remember how it was the entire top 3 that blew it? That was the great helicopter shot overhead there, and I'm sure that they all want a do-over of that one.
Devin having to defend coming down into Mountford. The battle just will not quit as Reese Gardner again puts his wheels into the dirt, and that cost him He seems like he's quicker than them, but he's kind of been his own worst enemy.
Yes and no. I do think that he is quicker than them in the sense that he is closing the gap, but these two are fighting. Look at the number 2 car. Devin's going to try driver's right this time, but Cito's going to lead him underneath the railroad track. So back to my point, I do think the green 94 is faster, but it seems like these two drivers in first and second might be a little bit more comfortable with this car.
Some absolutely spectacular shots that we're getting of this fight. And it's not even over. We're on lap 4 out of 5. We still got 2 laps to go here. As once again, Devin is going to use that slipstream. They start to pick up speed and get up to 290. I'm seeing 297 for Cito coming down this straightaway. This is incredible stuff. He goes defensive, coming up into Tannery Corner. Going to force him to go the long way around. Can he outbrake him as they'll go at it once again in this game of chicken?
They both barely get the car stopped. I just want to point out the respect that is being shown between these two. In open wheel cars, even if you just make the slightest of contact, most of the time it'll send either yourself or your competitor off the racetrack. That was a big mistake from our original pole sitter. It's going to drop Cito all the way down to 3rd place and open the door for Reese Gardner.
I mean, good save to keep it from becoming a wreck, but look at how much he's lost. Reese Gardner now looking for the lead. He's got 1 position. Can he make it 2 in a single lap before they get to the white flag? Coming up to the braking, he is nose to nose as it's going to be one more game of chicken under braking into Mountford, but they've got 1 more lap after that on top of things to try and decide this one. Reese Gardner took the victory in the minis for the handicap race. Can he also get it in the F1 class as he's able to swing through the corner and take the lead?
He's able to put the power down nicely coming out of that final turn, but this is the area of the racetrack that Devin Braun has just been so aggressive. Once again, he moves to the right side, re-squeezes him a little bit. Remember, the green 94 hasn't gone side by side in this section of the racetrack. They leave room. Can Devin hang tough on the outside? He's doing it again.
I cannot believe what we are seeing. Devin will hold on to the lead, but look who's come back into it. Cito is going to try and see if he can get back into position here as he fights with Reese coming down into Longford Corner. Goes the long way around. Reese tries to set up the exit. 1, 2, 3 on the final lap, heading down Tannery.
Oh, and I think that Cito actually just kind of struggled a little bit trying to put that power down. Let's take a look at what had happened a little bit further back in the pack. This was Canton and blowing the corner and wrapping that chassis around a hay bale.
Really a shame to see. By the way, Hillebrand still leading down in the F3s currently. He's 6th overall. Oh my goodness, just about pushing each other through the corner, and that actually cost Cito and Reese, I think, as it looks like maybe they got too close.
I think that Reese was being very smart when he let Cito by. It just has been maybe a little bit too many mistakes out of that green number 1 car, because this was really the final corner. This is coming out of Newry Corner. Devin Braun just has to not miss any gears on the upshift, nail the brake zone, and he'll be looking at that checkered flag.
That's a little bit easier said than done from what we've watched of these cars, but man, the wheel-to-wheel action has just been impressive. Are they coming up on lap traffic too? Is that what we're seeing? This could play a part in it. This is the back of the F3 field right as they get ready to finish the race. And it looks like racing line for Devin Braun is going to be clear, but can he accelerate cleanly? Yes, he can. He is going to come away with the win here for the open wheel race of the HRSC races here at Motorama. What a way to finish this afternoon's events. They gave us an incredible show to enjoy to wrap it up.
You were right in that we just barely got to the back of the F3 field, and that leaves us a whole lap of competition to watch these guys. And right now it's Nicholas Hillebrand leading that class. Remember, Hillebrand was part of that little bit of an issue through that Mountford corner on the end of lap 1, but he's done a really nice job to recover. Currently leads over David Purchase there in second place, and Robin DeVos kind of hanging out on the podium as well.
Yep, DeVos was up in that second spot for a while, but has fallen back to this P3. And credit to Purchase, obviously was not as quick on race pace, but to hold on to P2, that's really a testament to him making good on what opportunities fall into his lap. Gary James, wasn't Gary also involved in the schmozzle into that final turn?
I believe he was, and if not, it was kind of the viaduct on that immediate next lap. So it was the top three that got caught up in Mountford Corner, and then it was the top three that got caught up in the viaduct just a few turns later. And that was pretty much our entire F3 field. So from there, call it reset and call it 4 laps of racing for them to sort it out. And Hillebrand has kind of come out on top of it all.
And out of our 17 starters, only 10 are going to see the checkered flag. I wasn't kidding when I said we're likely going to see more cars be out of this race than any other. These are difficult machines to wield, but Nicholas Hillebrand has wielded this F3 to the best of anybody for today's short sprint race. Just one more corner to go, and you can see the gap that he's got over the likes of David Purchase, so he's pretty well in the clear as long as he's tidy. Car looks a little bit squirrely, but he's got it. And a little celebratory drift is going to take him to the checkered flag and victory here at Longford.
Kind of took the words right out of my mouth. I think that was a happy slide there at the end out of Mountford Corner. Just a happy little drift to celebrate the race win. Watch everybody else come across the line. The F3 field, I think Austin Birchfield will probably be the last car to kind of cross the line here as we get some of the action shots. I couldn't believe the racing that we saw between the number 1 and the number 2 car.
Same. I mean, honestly, all three. Throw Reese in there as well, because like we kept saying, the respect shown between them into portions of the track where there's barely room for one car, let alone 2. And they did it, I'd say, more laps than they didn't. I try to think how many times they were single file down into the viaduct.
And this shot right here, up and over the railroad tracks, I think it's so neat. And I do want to give credit to Reese, because I think that he realized he had speed, but those other 2 were actually faster and more comfortable. And he kind of saw that and realized it, let them battle for the win.
So victory for Devin Brown today, as Cito Weiher was P2, Reese Gardner P3. Neil Santowski was 4th as Riley Wyans was 5th. From there, Nicholas Hillebrand P6 and David Purchase 7th. Robin DeVos was 8th. Hillebrand, by the way, your winner of the F3 cars. Gary James 9th and Austin Birchfield was 10th. Then from there on down, it was literally all DNFs for the final 7 of this race. And unfortunately, they shouldn't feel too ashamed, I'd say, because it looked like they were a handful to try and handle these cars. But the good news is we'll get a chance to do it tomorrow, of course, and we'll have more racing to talk about in a bit. In the meantime, why don't we talk to Devin Brown and see how he feels about today's racing, because he certainly had lots of action out there, including that final race. Devin, our jaws were on the floor at the side-by-side racing we saw in some of the trickier parts of this lap. I mean, you've got to be grinning ear to ear right now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Of course. I mean, we only have 5 laps. Might as well spend them side-by-side the whole time.
You know, I even joked that I felt like there was more laps that you guys were side-by-side through the viaduct than you were single file through there. Reese also got involved. I mean, how likely did you feel like the win was going to be on this one? Because it certainly seemed like you had to fight for it.
Well, let's put it this way. There was no way of knowing until literally the final braking zone who was going to win, because like anyone could just wait until then. It's basically kind of like Indy in that sense, where you just wait it out until the end.
That's a good way of comparing it. What about with those minis and the Cobras? Joey and I were both kind of watching, and saying to each other, "Oh man, we really want to get in these cars because they look like so much fun." Did you have a preference between the Mini or the Cobra after trying both?
Gotta be honest, I think it's the Mini for me, because the Cobra doesn't really have any brakes, which doesn't go well with insane amounts of power. So yeah, the Mini actually slows down, which is better.
I mean, that's that American ethos, all the power, but nothing to try and slow it down. But, wow, congratulations on the victory for the open wheel race. You gave us quite a bit of entertainment tonight.
Thank you. Glad I was here.
Devin Brown, your winner for the F1 cars. As I think we've got our winner in the F3s, if Joey wants to talk with Nicholas Hillebrand.
Yeah, first of all, Mr. Hillebrand, congratulations on kind of making the recovery drive to win that F3 class.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was not an easy task.
So we caught the initial lap final corner deal. What was going on down there?
Well, I was going for my normal braking points, having blissfully forgotten that I had slipstream on the way there, so I was a little bit faster than I was in qualifying, and about at the point where I saw, I basically stepped on the brake and I just went, oh, well, that was my braking marker 5 meters further back, and that is the apex. Cool, I'm not going to be hitting either of those today. So, yeah.
It was wild. Now, up front in the Brabhams, it was crazy wheel-to-wheel racing. The F3s kind of got strung out a little bit more. But I got to ask you, with this car and this track combination, what did you like enjoying to drive most about it?
Just overall, it's really, really fun with the F3s because, you don't really have too much to make up on just pure power alone. So you have to carry all of the momentum. You have to be clean. You have to be late on the brakes and confident on the brakes. And basically any braking zone, any acceleration zone, you just have to completely nail your marks. And it's just incredible fun to, just push it to the limit on that. And especially in these cars, you have basically just constant slipstream battles.
I know that you do a ton behind the scenes. I got to say that these broadcasts have really come a long ways between the live timing and scoring, the camera angles that we're getting now, just the shots of the cars and the track are fantastic. So you guys are doing a terrific job back there behind the scenes. Is there anything that you're really looking forward to in the future events?
Well, for next year, I'd love to host an entire sort of career ladder with these cars. So a Formula 1, F2, F3 style entire season, basically, with 10 and 12 rounds each per series for the first half. And then after that, once we hopefully are done with completely physics overhauling the 1950 sports cars, hopefully another season of that. We've got a lot of good tracks coming out right now, a lot of good tracks in progress, and permission to use even more great tracks that we are, converting at the moment. So a lot of great things happening behind the scenes. But yeah, huge thanks to Wuchu for making that happen. He's there at the site right now, obviously. And yeah, it's really, really cool for this opportunity to, hold a combined event, with the on-site event of the TAS Motorama. It's just really, really awesome.
Well, thank you so much for all the work that you put in, and thank you for coming out and racing. Is there anybody that you wanted to give a shout out to?
Just, Wuchu for helping making this happen. To you guys, of course, for an absolutely fantastic broadcast as always. And yeah, just thank you everyone for allowing us to dive back into the past like this.
Well, that was Nicholas Hillebrand, your winner in those F3 cars here today.
Got one more driver to chat to, Reese Gardner. Get to chat with an Australian here for this very Australian event. Reese, I have to say that Joe was talking a little smack about you. He didn't think that you were quick enough to catch those two up front. What do you have to say to that?
I have to say, running side by side costs you more than you think.
It definitely allowed you to get in the mix. We were pretty wild. Those two were able to run side by side through that portion of the track. Were you kind of stunned they could keep doing that so consistently?
Yeah, honestly, I was. I mean, at these speeds, I didn't really have as much confidence running side by side as I did in the Minis and Cobras. But yeah, I saw what they could do, and I figured, more towards the end, I'd try it a bit myself. And Devin and I ran side by side in Sector 1, which was absolutely terrifying, but we made it through. So yeah, I'm really happy with how all of that turned out. I didn't quite succeed in grabbing the win like I knew I was capable of, but that was still a fun time.
You did get one win though, in the Minis in the handicap race. We were kind of wondering, coming on to that last flying mile, knowing how much more horsepower was under the Cobras, what was going through your head? Were you just trying to focus on your brake marker so you didn't miss it?
Yeah, I was, which you got to do in the Mini, because the braking zone comes up so late and you barely have any time to react if something does go wrong in the braking zone, especially at the final corner. But yeah, I expected the Cobras to catch us up a little quicker than that, honestly. When I came on to that last straight, I thought, hang on a minute, there aren't any Cobras on my timing. I'm wondering if, they've had their own problems along the way trying to work their way through the other Minis. I mean, the gap only did come down to about, 4.4 seconds or thereabouts at the end, which is still really good. But yeah, maybe for tomorrow's racing, they'll let the Cobras go a little bit earlier, and it might be a bit more of a head-to-head.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that. Before we let you go, do you have any words of encouragement for all of your Tasmanian neighbors that are trying the sim rigs over at Motorama right now?
I would say be very careful of the curbs around here. They're a lot more brutal than you think. And you can often brake a little bit later than you expect as well. Trail braking really helps around here.
Well, thanks for chatting with us. That was Reese Gardner, who finished third in the F1 cars here in our last open wheel race and took a win in the handicap race a little bit earlier. Joey, I'm so looking forward to this. We get to do this all over again, or at least I will, tomorrow afternoon for our friends down in Tasmania for even more of these races.
Yeah, I wish I could join you. I was super pumped to be here tonight. It was really cool to watch the Mini Coopers and the Cobras, and then ultimately, I think what I enjoyed the most was the combined race between the two. Maybe they'll take into account what Reese was saying and allow those Cobras to go maybe just a little bit sooner. I don't think they needed much, but maybe just a handful of seconds sooner, and then we'll kind of get to see that multi-class traffic, which, oh my goodness, that would be enjoyable to watch.
Oh, it'll be so much fun. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you as well at home are looking forward to it. Thank you again to all the folks at Motorama, not only for attending, but for coming and watching and trying out the Sims. Thanks to our team today, Christian and Joey, and we'll be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Had to make sure I got that right. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.
Did you hear the Tas Petroleum Motorama is on bigger and better?
Is that just a guy thing?
It's for the whole family with something for everyone. Motorama is more than just cars and bikes.
Can we go? Our rides are free.
Sure thing. Let's get our tickets.
Yay!
Get your heart racing and your adrenaline pumping at Tas Petroleum Motorama. October 26th to 27th, Symmons Plains Raceway. Go to motoramatas.com.au for tickets.
G'day guys, welcome to Motorama, a throwback to the great days of racing in Tasmania from 1953 through to 1968 at the wonderful Longford racetrack. Bit over 4 miles of racetrack, the fastest track in the Southern Hemisphere, attracted 7 Formula One world champions in that period of time. Today and tomorrow, you get to race on this fabulous piece of track in cars from the era. Wish you all good luck, have fun with it, and enjoy Longford.